Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to the Housing Committee meeting of August the 29th, and it is 1:08 p.m. Recommendation that the Housing Committee meeting agenda for August 29th, 2022 be approved as circulated. Mover? Siobhan? Seconder Malcolm? I feel like it's going to be very repetitive.
We'll switch it up.
All in favor? Carried. Adoption of the minutes. Approval of minutes, recommendation that the minutes of the Housing Committee meeting held on August the 10th, 2023. Actually, there's an error there. Actually, there's two errors there. 2023, we've got the wrong year. Okay, all right. August 10th, 2023 be adopted. Yeah, Malcolm and Siobhan, thank you. Carried. All in favor? Carried. Okay, new business. Expert input by Bayview Homes. Discussion notes. Sarah, do you want to, would you prefer that he just steps into, yeah, okay. You're up to bat. So take it away.
Okay, so there's a couple factors that I wanted to because in this say we're talking about these garden suites, right? The secondary suites, it's very hard to say, okay, this is what you as a committee want people to do this. You want them to, go through this process, but it's hard to give some accurate numbers because anywhere they're going to do it in town is going to be a little different. And I just wanted to go over some of the stuff. I don't know if you have a chart here. I just wanted to go over like how the different areas in town affect the cost of construction, and where, like, you get whoever the contractor is that's going to be building these things is going to, you won't be able to give a one price to fit all. And so if you've got, that's your grade, and wherever our 351, which is our 200-year floodplain level, wherever that's sitting. So that's wherever that sits in the town, like over on Riverside or some of the lower areas, that could be 3 feet different, or it could be right on grade. So if you're in the tree streets or some areas or stuff, it may be less of a problem. And this is all to do with the foundation. So when you get from the foundation up, you're dealing with a lot more sort of surety. So if it's a modular, if it's a stick built or whatever, from that point up. But this is the place. So to put a standard foundation wall in, it's going to look like that, and that's going to be 3'6" below grade. Now, this 351, your foundation wall, if we've got a 3 feet, then you're going to add to that. So your foundation wall is going to sit up here so that your floor is the 351 is below your floor. And so that is a thing in the town that we have to deal with. Now, if the grade is down here, obviously, or halfway up, it's going to decrease that. So maybe if 351 is up at this level, maybe you want to go with screw piles so that you are, and then insulate this floor and then set it on top of screw piles. So maybe that's a better option. If 351 is sitting here, maybe you want to go a slab on grade with a thickened edge, which is more of a cost effective way to go. So maybe if that level's like that, then you could go with a foundation wall is another option with a slab on grade, or you can go with the crawl space in here where this is open. That is the thing that is going to be like a big variable in different parts of town. Now, in other municipalities, it's things like what the ground conditions are like. But here in Sycamoose, we've pretty much got our sand. It's sand. There's about a foot of organic fill, and then there's sand. So that's all kind of the same, but that 351 is a big part of it. So that is definitely a factor. Some of the other factors are access to the backyards and how, like, you may say, well, in this instance, it makes sense to stick build this structure, or in another instance, it might be a modular thing that you truck into place. So those are kind of some of the things. And then a big thing that I've kind of been asking is like, how is this building going to be finished? What is the exterior finishing going to be? How does the committee feel about vinyl siding versus hardy, or metal, or what? Like it's one of those things that if you don't make it cost effective for the homeowner, they're not going to do it. So I think that's a big part of it. And yeah, so I think I'm obviously not an artist, but I just want to give you more of an understanding of how in different areas of town, that 351 is going to affect what you choose for a foundation. It's also up to the client. They may not want a slab on grade. Concrete can be cold unless you heat it. You may want to have a wood subfloor and a crawl space. So but when for what you're trying to do, select a proponent and select design and stuff, there's going to be a bunch of variables for that. So you do.
How's this work? Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, so, I don't know what the committee feels about, do we want to make these energy efficient, and so or fire retarded, like hardy board, I think is fireproof, Brian?
Yeah, it's not fireproof, it's
but
fire retardant.
It's got a higher flash point or whatever it's called, eh?
Yeah, flame shred rating.
Thank you. Flame shred rating.
Yeah.
Compared to vinyl siding, which will just melt pretty quick.
Sure. Yeah.
I noticed in your thing, it's about 10 or 5,000 bucks difference between hardy board and vinyl sort of thing.
Yeah. So the other main point that I wanted to talk about was if you are using a price per square foot, the smaller the unit, the harder that there's a problem with that. Because let's say you're going to compare a 400 square foot unit with an 800 square foot unit. They both have a bathroom. They're both going to have one bathroom. They're both going to have one kitchen. They're both going to have one heating system, and they're both going to have one ventilation system. The ventilation system is something that came into the code in 2018 that is a very important little factor in a house. That ventilation system is not a big cost because the cost of the whole house is so much more. But in a small space, you have to meet the code, and there's only a few ways you can do that. So my point was that you've got two units, and if one is twice the size of them in these small conditions, that's not gonna be there's less of a difference in the cost because of all those things that you need to do. And also a contractor, whichever contractor is working, has a setup cost. So they have different overhead like insurances and things like that that have to be done for a small project or a large project. There's also the other factors, that the big factors have to do with servicing. So the servicing is a massive part of it. So if you've got a property, you've got a house in front, and you've got this garden suite. Where the sewer goes, if the sewer, a lot of our houses, it'll go out the back and then tie in because there was a septic field.
That's exactly what my
Exactly.
place does.
Yeah, so you would go across and luckily in this municipality, we can tee into that sewer line. Not all municipalities will allow you to do that.
We're allowed that currently?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, it was one of the things that, I think it was about 3 years ago started, so you have to have a backflow preventer in both places, which just makes sense. And you'd have to have a clean out at some point there. So, but that's a really good thing for this. But if this is 100 feet or 1,000 feet, it's a big difference. Also the water line. So you're gonna get sewer and water and electrical to this unit. How far away from the house it is a really important thing. Is the water line to the house, which is mostly a 3/4 line, how big is that house? Does it have to be upgraded? Do you have to bring the water line before the meter or after the meter? Lots of questions like that. So those are things that everybody wants to say, okay, this thing is 450 square feet and this is what it costs. But there's all the other stuff that's included that is specific to a property, that not just the 351, the size of the property, the size of the house, the size of the service, electrical service. If you have a small electrical service and a big house and you want to power that, you may not have enough for a sub panel. In that place, you may have to upgrade your
The separate pole.
yes, well, maybe you upgrade your house to a larger service, and then you go a sub panel into there. And if you want to meter it separately, you could do. There's a number of things, but I guess my point is that from one structure to another, say one being twice the size, one being 400 square feet, and one being 800 square feet. Some of the variables, like some of the things that have to go in both of those things, are going to keep those prices a little closer. It's not in a 3,000 square foot house and a 6,000 square foot house. The square foot number works a lot more, but the smaller you get, the more that square foot price doesn't. So when you've got proponents coming with designers, they're going to say, this is my design cost, this is what my royalties are, and this is what this house should cost. They don't have to be super accurate with that. They don't really have any skin in the game. Because, and that's nothing against designers or architects or anything like that, but they're gonna say, this is how much it should cost. If it goes over budget, it really doesn't involve them. They're not gonna be the ones that are yelled at. It's gonna be the contractor. So I would be careful with taking those estimated numbers from a designer who is somewhere else that doesn't know about the 351, doesn't know anything about the lot, and sort of, that's a problem. So I don't know if that's something that you are worried about, or if you just want to.
Yes, Siobhan.
Through the chair, thank you for being here. This kind of has been my whole spiel. Exactly what you're saying is we need to have, like, the ground is different. Sigmas is just a different breed.
Sure.
So with this, when we're looking and even when you're saying like building, because everything, like I was talking to someone else and they're like, you still need to put a washer and dryer and you still need to put a bathroom in it doesn't matter if it's
Big or small.
big or small, those costs are stagnant.
Those are fixed.
Fixed, sorry. But one of my questions is, when we look at this, have you seen many people interested, like you're a builder, you're a big builder in town, you're very well known. how many people are actually interested in secondary suites? Like I was approached by someone on Sunday, actually, that's actually putting in a big garage on their property. And I said, oh, you should put a secondary suite up top. Make some more money, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, man, I don't need people living on my property. I got enough crap going on in my life. So as someone who does a lot of new builds in Sycamores, do you see people going, how do I make some more money? Or are they just building and they just don't want the hassle?
There is a point of the house, a $2 million build. They're gonna put a suite in for their family and guests, and it's more of a guest suite. So when people come and stay, they have their own place. Ones that are less expensive, they're, more, working class people.
Yeah.
They're gonna do that as a mortgage helper. And a lot of times it's in new construction, it's not in retrofitting to an older property. So the answer is when you're building a new construction, that's an opportunity where I always suggest that if we're gonna, why don't we we've got one across the channel right now where we've put a suite above the garage. And they are definitely going to use that as for their family. And they're gonna use that for guests and stuff like that. And then possibly that could be, that could be a rental, a long-term rental at some stage. But it's really dependent on where they are in their lives. It's harder for people that are building, more of a modest house, because they've already, the price of construction has gone up so much and they're like, oh, now I gotta add more to it. And a lot of times what I'll say is, why don't we rough in for everything?
Right.
And create a space that can be added to later. And then you're not having to go through the whole thing. As far as a garden suite, I definitely, it's math, it's just math. It's like, okay, so you have this house and it's an older house and your mortgage is this much. You can put this garden suite in, it's gonna cost $150,000 and you can make $1,000 a month on it. That's right around the point of, it's not a cash positive, but it's not bad.
Mhm.
And then you've got this thing that you can work on. It's all whether somebody can get a line of credit or what they can get out of their property. I like the idea of the garden suite personally because of a number of reasons. A lot of times with a suite above the garage, there's a ton of stairs. You've got a long flight of stairs, so that sort of is a little harder for older folks, for people with limited mobility. These kind of things can be you can use for a bunch of things. Back to what you were saying about the fire rating. That's a definite thing to think about. In the middle of town, I don't know if it's such a big thing. I think on the edge of town, it's a little more, like you're right up against the forest. But yeah, it's something to think about. But back to what I said before, if you don't make this affordable,
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen. And but your question was that there's people asking, they're not really asking for these kind of secondary suites in older homes. I haven't had too many calls for that. I have had people that want to put suites above garages, so like a carriage house kind of situation.
Yeah, Malcolm
No,
first. Oh, Malcolm first. Go ahead.
Yes, my thoughts was along the same lines as yourself, Brian, where I think there's like Sycamores has got a lot of seniors, higher than the provincial population by a bit. 55% or something like that is seniors. And that's rate based on 65 plus, but if you include 55 plus, it's probably even more.
Sure.
So as those seniors get old, they're in the original family home, the kids have gone to school, graduated, left, and maybe one of the partners has passed away there, or they're both still living, but they want to downsize. And it's their original family home, so I think there's a lot of homes in St. Louis with seniors living in them that are probably mortgage free. So they could draw a lot of equity, like you mentioned, just borrow against the family house, build a cottage house, probably move in it themselves and rent out the old family detached home. So I think there's a situation in St. Louis where there's a lot of houses that are probably mortgage free with seniors in them that want to downsize, but still independent living, not assisted living. Whether it be a couple or just a single spouse, and use the equity in that home to build a cottage, a garden suite, move into that. And then you have a single detached home for a young family to move into. So it has a domino effect. And if we change the rules to allow for waive the DCCs and the garden suite being a tax exemption, property tax exemption if it's used for rental, would that change the dynamics in town, do you think?
It's really, it's not my area of expertise, to be honest, as from a builder's point of view. I can definitely see there's certain things that would definitely help if to incentivize it. There's only so much the district can do though.
Yeah.
But I think that obviously the more you can get it so somebody can afford, if somebody can charge enough rent to cover that mortgage or line of credit or whatever. But it's really, that's more of a question for a banker.
Yeah.
And maybe there could be like one of the things I've thought about is if you can identify some of these people you're talking about that are older couples that are in a house and approach them and give them so this is something that could be done and see where people sit. I find that the older people that I've dealt with in the past, there's a couple things that they all sort of share. One of them is a healthy fear of the district and its red tape.
We're trying.
No, and it's not
I made some staffing changes.
it's not a slight on anything. It's just how people are when they get older. My parents are the same way. They're like, oh yeah, they're gonna want something from me, or they're gonna take away my rights or something. And they're when I've talked to them, they're not sure what you're gonna do to them. They just think it's gonna be something. Or my taxes are gonna go up, my this and that. And it's something that happens when you get older. And I think that is one of the things. And if you can say, I think it's more of a face-to-face conversation. And unfortunately that's hard, but you send emails out or you want people to go on a website and they're over the age of 65. Real tough. They're going to be like, oh yeah, no, it's a tough problem. So.
Oh, Siobhan, you had a question, or did he cover it?
No, he didn't, but thank you. Well,
Okay.
through the chair.
Yes.
So do you see potential so we're really focusing, I think I'm not going to speak for the committee, but I have been more focused on the tree streets, like I feel like one of our where we're looking for infill is on the tree streets.
Yeah. And
either putting, either a basement suite in or a garden suite or an attached garden suite. That's kind of what we've been really focusing on.
Sure.
Is that something builders are interested in? And do you feel with the people that you deal with that is actually has potential? So you're speaking to someone's putting in their new home and they're putting in, and there's not a lot of lots left in the tree streets. Like there's 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So are those older homes going to go there? Or those people are just going to set on it and then they're going to be bought up as a secondary home for someone as a vacation property? as we've seen over the last 20 years.
Yeah, that's, my opinion on that is that these secondary suites, first of all, you talked about basement suites. I've been pretty negative about basement suites in Sycamoose because of the water table. And there's certain problems as far as air quality that can happen. There's, you know, just they're damp basements. So that's why I think Sycamoose is specifically like, this is a great place because we have these large lots from when we had to have septic. We've got sort of a modest house and a big backyard. Having something in the backyard or an addition to the house, like you said, I think is above ground is a better option. So there's that. And I think that it's going to be, who you've got to target is someone that is like possibly a family, like a family, but they need to have the income to be able to pay for this and to be able to, and they have to have equity in their home. I think that there's a good opportunity if an older couple has a property in the Tree Streets and they want their say a family member, like their kids, to move into the house, and then the older couple move into the garden suite. That's a really good option, and because a lot of the younger people are not going to be able to afford some of these houses. That's the problem. Is I don't think that it's just normal people building houses anymore. Like working class people, it's a big nut to crack. So because the cost of construction is really high.
I just have one comment, because what we're proposing here, and thank you, Brian, for this is awesome. This conversation is really good because you're making things much clearer to us what the different components are of providing plans is one thing to an individual, right? But with all the other components that are such variables depending on where they are. And the other thing is with the housing crisis, like provincially, nationally, whatever, the onus, I mean, basically we're throwing the onus on the homeowner, and we're trying to incentivize them to create housing. And like,
yeah,
is the federal, I guess I'm going to ask maybe Sarah, is the federal government or the provincial government at all, like, what are they stepping up to provide individual homeowners for doing this kind of a project? Or are they counting on each municipality to bear the burden of trying to make this work?
Through the chair.
Yeah.
So the first hurdle, and it's our top strategy in our housing strategy, is to remove any barriers at the local government level to this happening, right? So that's why we were looking at updating our R1 zone so people could do more secondary suites. Why? Because when we did a survey, a lot of people identified that as a top thing they were interested in. So there's tons of interest in doing secondary suites in town, like as far as locals go.
Right.
We did the survey. And yeah, and we've already started looking at some other things in terms of what the federal and provincial government is offering. So this stuff's only started rolling out. So a big one at the federal level is the CMHC and the Housing Accelerator Fund, right? So we're working hard on that, but you do need to focus on that removing red tape piece to help. They want to see you make long-term changes that will go beyond the length of the program. The program's 3 years, they want to see something long-term. So that's why we're talking about things like zoning or development processes, these kinds of things, or building a plan library. They're really keen on that. They loved that idea, the people at CMHC, because that's going to be around for a while, right? And it's going to be affordable. It helps to reduce that cost. We can't control construction cost, right? Construction materials are going to fluctuate. The cost of labor is going to fluctuate, right? But we can control some of the other pieces around it. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And then the provincial level, the province is doing all kinds of big things. One of them that they're talking about rolling out in the fall that we'll know more about hopefully soon is allowing every property to have up to 4 dwellings on it.
So
So let's not freak out, because we're, Sarah and Daryl and Jeremy and Ellie, everybody's on top of this. So don't freak out, right? We're working on this. The other piece that's actually really exciting that I just learned about is BC Housing is looking at offering, and they're starting as a pilot program in the spring in 2024, a loan program where most of it will be forgiven over time. Up to $40,000 for people to do conversions. So it won't be for detached secondary suites like a coach house or a garden suite. It'll be for an addition to your existing house or conversion of existing space within your home. And so I think they were going to offer that to 3,000 people in BC. We're going to be able to.
How many people, sorry?
3,000 people.
yes, it's not us.
It's a pilot. It's a pilot. So I only just learned about this. So it will be nice to see more, of course. Yes.
Okay. Oh, and one other, just in response to that. So I was reading, I follow Western Investor. I don't know if any of you guys do, but there was a article on making that 4 units per property. And when the tax implications on that, when a homeowner goes to sell their land, because their primary residence is only one of them, so they pay a high tax on the other 3 units that are on it. So I think that that's a piece that down the road. And so now they're trying to address that because they're sort of reeling from callback on that particular subject in what are the
Yeah, there
tax
are
implications.
questions around tax implications for rental property,
Yeah.
attached to property. Yeah, there's more to come. It's not like there's lots of consultation going on and these questions are being asked and raised, and
Yeah,
I feel like we're being heard and listened to. So I think there'll be more, and those we can talk about those at future committee
Yeah,
meetings
okay.
as more info is available. But today, let's focus
Okay.
on what we're here for.
right. No, it's valid.
That is like.
Yeah.
Try and break down the barriers so somebody will have a secondary suite. I think you should worry about 1 secondary suite. Having 4 units on, that's not the problem. Like, it's like, the problem is actually getting 1 more.
Right.
And it's like, if you have 4 living spaces on your place in the Tree Streets, then you're arguably, I wouldn't say it in this meeting, but what's the whole idea? Like, I think it's reasonable to have an extra suite. It's not like we're having a hard enough time getting people to get 1 extra suite. And that making it allowable to have 4, it doesn't really help that person that's just trying to get 1 extra, but that's just my.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Sarah?
So just want to make clear, number 1, the province isn't saying just suites. The province is talking about townhouses, houseplexes. It's not just suites, right? But what we'd probably see in the Tree Streets would probably be something more like suites. The other thing I wanted to share is that when we did the survey, we asked if people wanted 2 suites. We didn't ask 3. The 3 that we were talking about in the R1 zone just came from the province is talking about 4. And our existing land use designation, the low density residential already allows it. So I mean, that can change. We can just leave it at 2. And then my only other side comment to that is it seems reasonable to me to have 2 if one of them is part of the house and you don't even see it. I think that's reasonable. I don't really think it would change the property much. Like, we went by a few houses that have multiple suites that we know of, and their impact on the character of the neighborhood was pretty low
They look
in
good.
terms of parking. Yeah.
Joanne?
Yeah, through the chair. I mean, I'm with you on this one. I think we're just going, I think we really need to look at 1 or 2 suites. I mean, personally, and I'll say it on the record, I think it's a complete knee-jerk reaction from the province that is in a housing crisis, and they're just, and Mel and I were at a housing meeting for the province probably about 5 months ago.
How long ago?
It's been about that long, yeah.
Really?
And being told this was being rolled out. I personally don't feel like 4 plexes in anywhere, well, there's certain places we could probably have them, but especially in the tree streets, I don't think people want that. I think that affects parking. I think that affects our sewer systems. I think water, it is massive. So I think we really need to focus on how do we get garden suites that are affordable. And if that's a granny suite or someone moving out or a rental suite for a long-term worker, and I think we really need to focus on what that looks like. We don't have a choice what the provincial government says we should be doing. Personally, on this housing committee, I don't think that should be anything that we should be promoting. The end by Siobhan.
Okay, Malcolm?
So.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, the accelerator fund covers expansion for housing, I think, Sarah, to the point where we get as a local government money, and then we can choose whether we put that in upgrading the sewer or water in a certain area if there's more infill happening in certain areas. So that's one of the reasons for that accelerator fund is it's a grant back to the district. But we have flexibility in where we put them.
Mhm.
So that helps offset that a bit.
But
It was a slapstick move with the government knee-jerk, just a broad brush and then followed up with this accelerator grant to offset the impact it has on capacity, infrastructure sort of thing. So
I like it. Oh, thank you.
Just one thing about, you had mentioned about, insulation and like high performance. That is something I think that it's sort of not seeing the forest of trees, and I understand what you're saying, because we build high performance homes and we're really into insulation and energy efficient homes and everything like that. But it's also, I think that within the BC building code, the level is high enough now that for one of these units, for the size of the unit we're talking about, I think if you want people to actually do this, you have to concentrate on things like safety and make it a safe, well ventilated home that in the insulation meets code and try not to exceed it, because in my opinion, people just won't be. It comes down to dollars and cents, and really as far as the looks of something, like you really just need to create a place that's got a bedroom and a bathroom and a kitchen and somebody can live in there. It can be overthought a little bit. And I'm saying that, and I build custom homes. Like I just think that this is something that you try and, I'm never going to say that you should lower like below BC building code. Like, people say, oh yeah, why do we need to meet this ventilation code? And why do we need to meet this insulation code? Well, there's good reasons for it. But one of the things, and I've had a conversation with Sarah before, is if the government was to waive the 351, that could be, because our biggest flood that we had in 2012, well, one of them, it was a meter below 350. So in the tree streets, if you're on a property where, let's say your 351 is a couple feet in the air, well, that can really add to a foundation, and it might be the barrier, like the cost of construction. So, and really, if the water level gets to 351 in the tree streets, there won't be a house standing. Like and so I think a garden suite getting washed away is way less of an issue, but that's just something.
Malcolm?
thank you. Is that a local government bylaw, or is that a provincial law that says you have to build above a floodplain, and our floodplain is 350? Do we have any influence as local government to have that, say, change to 350? How's that work, Ryan?
I don't know how you would have an influence on it, but it's not I would be very doubtful, but Sarah probably knows better on that.
Please.
Through the chair. So it was originally a provincial regulation that was imposed, and then later it kind of got downgraded to local governments to implement. So what we have is exactly what the province had previously. Little side note, we have had our floodplain remapped and it's deeper than it used to be. The extent hasn't changed, but it's deeper, but that really more affects where Brian lives than we live in the tree streets. So
Yeah.
So when it was done provincially, you had to apply to the province for what's called a floodplain exemption if you wanted to have habitable space or business, that type of thing below flood level. You had to apply to the province for that. Now you can apply to council. So yeah, council could, if they chose to, but just remember there's liability there. So I don't know, in my opinion, I would say let the province decide to waive that. If that's what you're thinking,
That's
in terms of liability.
has to do with insurance as well,
Mhm.
insuring your property. But I think that, you know, if the government, and I don't know which level, but probably provincial, was to be able to help in a situation like the tree streets, it's very close to the 351. And we built a house in the tree streets on Spruce where the line of floodplain was right through the middle of the house. So everything, like if we stand over here, we're not in the floodplain, and so the house beside it was not in the floodplain, and this house was. So you're subject to all the rules and regulations of that 200-year floodplain, and the one beside it isn't. And so it's a line that sweeps through the town. And so it's kind of, you know, it can be kind of a funny thing. I don't know, I don't know, Sarah could say, you know, if there was an exemption in that sector of town, like almost like a comprehensive development zone, like just in the tree streets, and you said, look, we're willing to sort of pass over that in this zone, and maybe down close to Riverside, they would say, well, no, because that's more of a risk.
Wrong? Did you?
Through the chair, I'm just wondering if it's something where people can take on their own liability, that we give them the option, saying, you know what, here's what it is, but you can ask for exemption, come to council, we're gonna tell you what planning says, and that you are at risk, but if you want to sign off on that, we're there with you. This is the last time, you know, if it's a meter down, then I don't know if that, and I don't know if that, like, that's gonna get one billed for us. Is it worth it, right?
Sarah? Comment?
Chair. Yeah, it is kind of adding more red tape, so it's nice if the province decides to waive it, and they might. This is what I was talking to Brian about, was the province was contemplating waiving that so that people could have basement suites, right? So one of the big things for Sycamoose in terms of knowing how many suites we have and having more people apply for permits was the fact that we only allowed them inside your house, and lots of people had basements, but they were below flood level and you couldn't actually get a building permit to do it. So we have no idea how many suites there are. The moment we adopted our new zoning bylaw, which allows people to do a detached suite, we got 5 permit applications, right?
So what?
5 permit applications for suites.
For above ground or detached?
So the moment we changed the regulation and made it easier, people were coming in and applying to do it. So that's amazing. The other key thing I think to make note of is, you know, from talking with Brian and his experience building in various places throughout town, if we talk about the tree streets and the floodplain, it's pretty nominal. So that extra cost, I don't think didn't sound to me like it was going to be a massive impact when we're talking about something that's 550 to say 600 square feet, which is what most houses can support in terms of a suite. It doesn't seem to me like that cost is going to affect it too much, because we're talking about a difference of 2 feet above existing grade, and that can be met structurally, or it can be met by doing structural fill. Like it's not as big a deal as down, say, Riverside Ave, closer to Main Street, where it's like up to your chest. That's where flood level is. And so then you have to get your floor above that level. That's going to cost a lot of money. So what I took from listening to Brian today and my previous conversation with him was that depending on where in town a foundation is gonna have different impacts because of the floodplain. But B, the tree streets where most of these lots are, right, where you could see that happening, because the center parts of town, there's a lot of support there for higher density dwellings, so it's not as likely for like little coach houses, right? Anyway, it's gonna be less because in terms of foundation options, you could do a slab on grade, or you could do a traditional foundation. And what I understood from Brian about a traditional foundation, as well as from McDermott, so I did talk to McDermott recently as well, is that doing a traditional crawl space is just so much easier in terms of insulation, saves you cost there, and then also being able to access all your equipment and where you can run like all your plumbing, your electrical, all these things, being able to access them later and being able to put them in the first place. It sounded like it was kind of the best way to go in general.
So, okay, I can't speak for McDermott.
No.
They're an ex builder, but it's a case by case situation. The reason that there's more crawl spaces being built is for that cost for, I'll say, a 1,500 square foot house. For a smaller thing, I would definitely go case by case. And in the tree streets, you can get up to, you could get up between right on grade to 2.5 feet, something like that. That's the variable. So maybe you want to do a slab on grade like that. That would be a slab on grade with a thickened edge would be cheaper than a foundation walls in a crawl space. So that could be the case, right? So if you say the floodplain was there, then I would probably go with a foundation wall and do a crawl space just so, because if you bring in structural fill and build up your whole backyard, it's very expensive. So, but if you do the thing to remember is that if you do a slab on grade, then that has to be insulated underneath. So there's lots of different factors, but it's not a thing that is, there's not just a couple of types of foundation. There's lots of different 25 foundation types that we could use, but we would pick the one that made sense in the application. So I know that that's kind of doesn't help that much, but I think it needs to be said that it's a case by case, and even though it's only 2 feet up, that does add a significant cost, because it's not, you have to figure out, okay, do we need a ramp out of here? And I think that encouraging homeowners to make them wheelchair accessible and level entry is good business for the town. I just think it's not going to cost that much more, and it's very, with our demographics, I think it's a good thing to do.
So I just have one question then. So moving forward, so for us to put together a proposed, in other words, this unit could cost this much. These are the variables, and lay them out for people so that they know that this is the range, that this is in addition to this build, or these are the costs that you may, I feel like giving them that. Does that make sense?
From my conversation with Brian through the chair.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I talked to Brian was to try to get a good idea about kind of a ballpark price that would fluctuate either higher or lower around there, because we got to start somewhere, that I could talk to SASCU about. So one of the things identified in our housing strategy was to look into a partnership with someone like SASCU to offer a loan program for our pilot, to try to get one or two, maybe three of these built, depending on, how things work out. So where that landed is around 150,000. And I mean, finishing obviously is going to be a big component. We're talking vinyl siding, we're talking laminate, we're talking not a lot of cabinets, but that covers off all the important things like a difference in foundations. So you've all got that, you all got that by email, right? So you get that, and it includes all those things. It's not something that we're not sharing publicly, because everybody on a case by case quote. Right, because there's
probably spelling mistakes in there.
And yeah, I just want to share
very quickly. So,
but as far as a place to work from, right? And I have been talking to Eldon at SASCU, And even if you don't have a ton of equity in your property, so I use myself as an example because I do own a property here. I've owned it this is my 3rd year, so I don't have enough equity yet. But if I wanted to do it, so how it would work for anybody else like me, they would have their property assessed, and based on the value of the property and the value of whatever that new building was going to be. So it's not based on construction value necessarily. And in general, so I did ask, one of the other staff there, have they had any recent assessments done? And typically it comes in higher than.
You mean appraisals?
Appraisal, I'm sorry, yes,
Assessment.
that's correct, an appraisal. But anyway, based on a few variables, they will loan you up to 70% of the value of your property. It's like, you know what? My property is worth like I would never build a secondary suite worth 75% of my property. I would never, 150,000.
75% of the equity in your property.
75% of the fair market value.
The value.
And that's right. And so the other thing they take in, it's not just the value of your property. They also look at how much rent at a fair market value you would get from that building. So that rent is part of the equity. It's interesting. It's doable.
That is interesting.
Yeah, so that's,
Go ahead.
that's a key point, Brian, is it? You sure that's the value, not the equity? Because,
No, I just read it straight from Eldon's email.
oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm looking, I'm
The
checking.
appraisal value of the home you have
And the new,
plus the appraised value of the new build would be. You're saying they'll lend you up to 75% of that?
Yeah, but it depends on what the appraisal, like an appraiser a third party appraise, like someone separate needs to appraise your property and appraise your proposed projects. So they need to see your construction plans. So what we're here today is to get people these construction plans ready to go. Right? And then you know how big it is. You get an idea of how much fair market rent is, right?
Okay,
Probably like, I don't know, $1,400, which, ideally we'd see less, but for something that's 50 square feet, that seems realistic. Yeah, I can share this email with you. I mean, this is, there's gonna be further conversation.
yes, Malcolm.
confidential.
Yeah,
Question to Brian, or maybe for the committee reading, I guess. So our 351, that's just a blanket we have in town.
yeah, so that's the two.
So why couldn't, it might be a council thing to direct staff to do, or a recommendation from this committee to council, but why can't we play with that elevation if we're so close that, like, if the tree streets are hitting at say 350, why don't we look at where our floodplain is and maybe establish some zones that can be 350 instead of 351? That's another incentive. It doesn't cost us anything.
I'd like Brian to comment.
Well, sorry, just before, and that we could have a caveat on that. If they choose to use 350 instead of 351, they have to sign off any additional increased liability. There'd be a caveat on them using that 350 instead of 351, that they're accepting any increased liability.
Okay, Brian?
So only for secondary suites we're talking about, because if you'll need to do it for new homes, like full homes, you'll need to stick with that 351 for the new home warranty. So it would just be for a secondary suite that was on your property. And the other thing that's interesting is if you build an addition onto your house, that 350, you're not subject to that. It's in that new space that's attached to your house. So that's a little bit of a thing. But if you build a garden suite in the back and it, but as a council, you could say, for this type of thing, we would say that 350 would be fine. And for this type of thing, but then you wouldn't be able to do it for a new build. Like if there was an empty lot and you were gonna build a primary residence, right, then it probably wouldn't work. So.
Okay, well, thanks for that advice.
Yeah.
So we can maybe as a committee think about doing.
Yeah, Sarah?
I was just gonna provide some background information on how floodplain exemptions work typically. Do you want to go first, Siobhan?
It doesn't matter. Okay.
Okay, sure. So when I've worked in other jurisdictions, those jurisdictions would have a policy around floodplains and floodplains exemptions. So like when they would consider it. So this could be one of them for a detached suite, right? And then typically the requirement would be you'd have to enter a covenant waiving liability, right? So that would be that caveat that you're talking about.
Right.
It's certainly doable, though I would strongly suggest, leaving it with staff to research in terms of getting legal counsel, maybe checking in with the province. Because if the province is going to do it anyway, do we need to do it? You know what I mean? Sigmoose is already punching way above its weight class.
We have authority at the local level to do that. Though.
Yeah.
Oh,
Take the, yes, Malcolm? Siobhan, yes, Siobhan.
I'm still here. My arm's getting tired. Through the chair, when we've got our variables, you got 15 to 70K, and I'm not, just so I understand it. So we've got 146 plus tax, and then does the variable start, we're adding on 15 on top of that 140K?
No, that's
70?
the lower, on all those variables, the lower number is
Yeah.
part of that.
Okay, that was just what I didn't understand. I appreciate that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, great.
It's like, that's what I think the cost is gonna be, but then if you have some of these variables, I wanted to demonstrate that that's a big change from 15 to 70. That's a big sweep, and that's a way of demonstrating just how important some of these changes could be and what the implications are.
Lot to lot.
From lot to lot, and because that's the problem is that's the thing I was most worried about when I heard about what you were doing about getting these plans. Is I think it's a great idea because people really want to have three options and pick the one they want. Because people I find are really wanna, like, when they'll come to me for a big custom home, you wouldn't believe it, but they'll come to me and say, I found this plan online on Janish, and it's like, it's the wrong way to do it, because like that was probably designed for, Arizona, and it has slow load, and why don't we design it for the lot? And so if people are gonna do that with big custom homes, then that sort of tells us that they like the fact that if I can pick A, B, or C, then they want to do that. My concern was that they said, oh yeah, okay, so we're gonna pick this and it's gonna be about this number. And then they go to do the job. And then all of a sudden they have these extra costs, and then they'll come back to you and say, you rooked me because you didn't tell me about all this other stuff. And I just didn't want that to happen. And I don't want, and if a negative thing gets out over this, then people won't do it.
Right.
And so, and I think like there could be a very good opportunity for a young person to start a contracting company to do this in town and
a little niche.
You know what I mean? And to do this very thing, somebody that's young and starting out that doesn't have, like the warranty and everything you need to build. You know what I mean? So I just don't want it to become a negative thing where people are saying, the town's trying to do this or do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That makes that much clearer, because I think my comment before was way off, not understanding that. So,
If you have questions about that,
yeah,
that list of what I've put down there and everything, like, lay it on me. Because it's not clear. It's a simple structure, but it's all would be built to code, and everything in that structure would have warranty and engineering. That's the problem is if you're just gonna get your uncle is a kind of a handyman and he's gonna build this together, put this together, it can't be like that.
and I think so I like this, but I think giving options on like, because people can spend more money if they want to. They want to say, I want to, but that's each individual's choice. So the fact that they can do this for making it affordable is key. Because I think it just gives, it's another option. Anybody else? Question? No?
Yeah, so one thing with the BC Hydro. Like you said, if an older house only has 100 amp, but you want to tap into the house for your cottage suite. It might be cheaper and faster than getting a power pole and hydro putting their thing on. Cause that's always a critical path, is waiting for hydro to come to do their thing.
Well, you could do, if you had a 100 amp service, you could do a 200 amp service and then run like for a reasonable house, like if you identify the houses in the tree streets, they're all similar. 3 to 4 bedroom, that's the most kind of thing. If you were to say, if you got a 200 amp service and then run a line to the garden suite with a sub panel in it, and you can that would work all day long. Or you could do a separate service, which is going to be a little more, and then that would run to that garden suite, and then at least it could be metered separately. So, and then that would be something for an electrician to answer, or BC Hydro, what would be.
I got a question. So if and maybe we're off topic, but somebody wanted to tie into their own home and they had a 100 amp service and their service is not up to code, then they'd be better off, like, because they would have to bring their own home up to code to put in a 200 amp panel and then send a sub panel?
Yeah.
Correct? Okay.
Yeah, so you're saying that maybe their service couldn't handle their house in the beginning? Or is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that what if it's old enough that it's not up to current code? So when you change the electrical panel, you would have to upgrade the whole house.
Yeah, the
And then, yeah.
BC Safety Authority would inspect
Mhm.
your house and the garden suite, and that would be a permit that you'd have to take out. But it's not a building permit, it's a BC Safety Authority electrical.
Okay. Siobhan?
Yeah, I just did this in my barn, actually.
Okay,
And so my house is 120 years old.
right.
So everything had to be upgraded in my existing panels.
Mhm.
And then, and then my barn could support about 10 people actually by the wiring I put in it. But it was about $5,000. It
Yeah,
wasn't.
so it's an added. cost.
It was an extra.
Yeah.
But you have to go up the code so your house doesn't burn down and they're responsible, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that could be, yeah, Malcolm?
How many amps would a typical 500 square foot cottage house home be? 50 amp? Is there such a thing?
That's an electrician question, more than me. I would say 75, something like that. Depends also, do you have any propane fixtures? Right, you could have propane heating, a propane stove, something like that. Then you use very little. The lighting doesn't take very much, or plugs. It's more things that heat.
Stove, washer, dryer.
And I haven't put a washer and dryer in there for a reason. Because talking to Sarah, she that's not a huge deal to have a closet with a stack washer and dryer in a unit like that. It's a little bit more plumbing. It takes up a little more room. But it is it's not in there because Sarah had said that, we're gonna be having a laundry in town here soon.
Well, there's one now at the car wash.
Yeah.
The new one that's going in at Paradise Motel that's public.
Yeah, there's one at the car washes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Any more questions?
Fabulous.
Just thank you very much for this, taking the time to make the sheet up for us and to educate us, and for your time, Brian.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
I want people to do it.
Yeah.
We'll try to get this right, eh?
Well, I think, yeah, no, it's a good thing. I'm glad you guys are working on this.
Okay, now we need you to find us a builder. You don't want to do it by the sounds, but you're like, we need a young guy. I'm old and tired.
Energy.
Well, thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
I very much appreciate that.
Dave, good luck.
Thank you.
Tom and Brian, really appreciate it.
Okay, moving on, we have expression of interest 23-147 submission reviews. And please refer to August 10th, 2023 Housing Committee agenda for example plans, which we all have or should have.
Before we go there, could I, like, from Brian's visit in the last agenda topic,
Right.
was there, did we agree on an action item out of that to look at the 350 elevation for specifically garden suites?
I think that that's a good idea. We can do that.
So, in terms of. You can always pass a motion to make a recommendation to council to direct staff to look into it.
Okay,
That's
Can we have discussion?
yes?
Sarah has brought up a couple times that the province might be changing it. Is that on the book somewhere in the province, or you just kind of heard rumblings? So if it's like, we're thinking 6 months, it's gonna happen, should we then back off, or is it? So is there something that you've read that it could be happening for us?
Yeah, it was one of the big ones on the list, but I need to go looking to see, to follow up on that one. I've been more concerned about the density change piece.
Yep.
Digging that up, but yeah, before doing that, because I think, because we're gonna have another meeting in October, so you could talk about the floodplain thing and more then. And I could bring more info. If that's
Yes, through the chair, I think that's it better, because instead of using staff times to replicate something the province is gonna do, if it's something that the province is gonna do in 2 years, then I think it's absolutely something we should be looking forward to, but if it could be happening within the next 6 months, because we're slow at everything, not us, but just life.
Yeah, I agree with Siobhan. I think that expediting the process, because if the province is 2 years behind, that's 2 years too late.
I think what they'll do is, well, I'm just guessing, they'll probably download that to local government. Don't make the overall rule, but they'll download it to local government to implement anyhow.
So,
Okay.
may I interject? They seem to be sort of taking back the floodplain thing, because a lot of local governments just couldn't really afford to do the work. And when they got the work done, they didn't necessarily have the capacity to implement changes in floodplain regulations. So they seem to have taken the reins again in terms of getting all that floodplain mapping updated. And so I'm sort of wondering if they're gonna be taking that on period again. If you know what I mean.
Taking the authority back.
I'm saying, let it sit with me and I'll look into it more and come back. with
Okay.
more info.
Yeah, through the chair. Is it something that we maybe, because I'm with Mel, that if it's not gonna happen, we need to absolutely start looking at how that affects our community. But so is it something that for October that we can then make a decision in October that we give it a month, I guess we have? And then if we don't have definitive answers that sit well with us, that then we say, hey, let's get this going to council and get working on it. Because we need to like get rid of, like, not hoops to jump for. We need to drop all the hoops onto the floor and get some stuff built.
Yeah, no,
Brian's first presentation, his first drawing was a variable in the
Mhm.
where you are and where that 351 heads. The Holland structural fill is expensive, or even the slab
Mhm.
foundation is expensive. So if you can, and he said some of them are just barely hitting 351 in the tree street. So that 1 meter difference might make a really good incentive to reduce a high cost barrel. That's the biggest swing in his spreadsheet there is between
Yes, it's foundation.
15 and 70,000.
Yeah.
If we reduce that by a meter,
Mhm.
that would reduce that variable.
Mhm.
So. But I agree with Councillor Rich. If province is gonna do that in the next little while, sure, let's let them do it. But I think even if they do it, they'd probably download to the local government to implement it.
Probably on a municipality by municipality, make it their responsibility, but I agree with you. Let's give it a month and see what happens and then,
Limited staff time just for yourself to just a high level look at it to see what that might look like for next meeting.
Siobhan?
Through the chair too, is it possible, Sarah, for you to find out roughly because again, I got no clue. If I build a 500 square foot home, garden suite, the difference between a meter of cement or whatever they use to build a foundation, right? So we're talking about changing rules and stuff, but if it's $2,500, which I'm sure it's not, you know, are we spending a lot of time changing a rule that's not going to cost a lot of money, or we really need to get on this and it's going to cost someone $20,000 for that 1 meter? I know nothing about cement or foundations.
Yes,
So Brian has done that work for us already. So this little spec sheet he gave us,
Right.
he actually ran all the numbers and went through and did a quote, but this is not professional, right? He didn't want it floating around. This is on a site by site basis, right? But this gives us an idea. So this is for a 550 to 600 square foot.
Yeah.
Which he was saying, you know what, the difference in cost of those is nominal. It's basically, it'll cost you the same for a 400 square foot.
Yeah,
Sorry, I keep saying 550, it's actually 350 to 600. There's actually a bigger difference. It's basically the same. And so what he's saying is that if you have minimal change, so the tree streets, you're looking at around 15K.
Mhm.
If you're down on Riverside Ave, you're looking at 70K.
but
So-
what is that by the meter? So if I get a 500 square foot house and I gotta do, if I have to do a 351, is that on Riverside, say I'm going high end, so it's 70K. If I get a meter off that in cement, does that now bring me down to 40,000, or it brings me down to?
I think there isn't really a minimal increment.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's kind of hard to,
15, there's a difference of $55,000.
The pour is by square foot, I would guess. I think I'm buying my cement by square foot.
No matter which size, is generally gonna be around the same price, and I think this is a good thing to go from, like, I wouldn't get too nitpicky, but at the same time, we can get more accurate details like that.
Yeah.
From the professional that we hire to design plans for us. We can then get specifics based on a specific set of plans. that we're-
Okay, but my question is not being specific on this, but if we're gonna put staff time and maybe change bylaws based on 351 to 350 for depth, then there is a base level for what a pour costs. So if I want to put my foundation in and I say I want a 6-foot foundation, just me, say I want to just pour a slab and it's going to be 6 feet deep, that's what I want. Then if the code is it only has to be 5 feet deep, I'm paying for that extra foot, and that's going to have a percentage in cost to it. So we can find out the difference of what it's going to cost if we remove this, because if we're gonna put staff time in and we're gonna sit here and debate, oh, hey, let's get rid of this before the government does it, and it's only gonna cost someone the difference of $2,500, it's kind of a waste of time in my mind. But if it's gonna be $25,000, then that's a huge difference. Are you kind of following me?
I'm following you, and what I'm telling you is the difference is $55,000. We already know this.
It's already done.
yeah.
But it isn't
He's trying again, but he's just gonna come back and say the same thing.
I mean, the,
It's not
12
done.
well, okay, the 15,000 represents a vacant lot at 351 with no work required.
Exactly.
The 70,000 represents possibly a 5.5, 6 foot fill to get to 351.
It's not about the concrete.
Depending on the elevation, the difference is 55,000. Best case scenario, you're at grade already and it's 15 grand. Worst case scenario, you're down the corner of Riverside, down around my neck of the woods, and you gotta go up 6 feet and it could be $55,000 extra.
Depending on which foundation you choose
And-
as well.
Right, so you got the corkscrew, you got the slab, you got the pony wall.
Yeah, right, we're talking different things, that's fine, I'll figure it
I
out.
think there's so many, when he says that there's so many types of foundations, I mean, he's only talked about 3 here, but there are many more, so.
Yeah,
the
25.
variation is huge. And it's on a case, like he said, on a case by case situation. I think that if giving a base number, once we finalize this, I think that's,
I think it's a valid question in terms of the tree streets, like this difference in cost, we're talking about the center of town. And necessarily like the bulk of the interest for these kinds of things is gonna be in the tree streets or like up in the rural properties. So I think it's a valid question. We can kind of, and then I can go back to Brian and just kind of ask, this 15K, is that specifically at grade or is this like in the tree streets? Because, when he and I had chatted, that's kind of where we were hoping to kind of keep this oriented to. If someone in the tree streets wanted to do this, because it's generally flat, it's not like in a wildfire interface area. There's all these other cost variables that don't apply. So I can double check with him on that for sure.
So,
is Malcolm?
yeah, so I used to build roads, so when you build structural backfill, you have to do it in lifts, and so I think to help Councillor Rich's question there too, to clarify better. So if you pose the question to Brian, ask him, so if you start at say 350, like we're thinking, or just say whatever the grade is, in increments of 0.25 of a meter, because that's how much you can spread and pack before you put another lift on for structural backfill. So in increments of 0.25 of a meter, as you go up, how much does each layer cost if you're filling in for a 550 square foot home? I think that's kind of what you're after, Siobhan?
That's exactly what I'm after.
Well, and I think too, like, I think it's important to sort of focus. I'm not trying to hammer this like a beat a dead horse. It's like in terms of where a floodplain exemption would make the most difference and be most worthwhile might be in the tree streets versus over here where less people are doing it. So then I get what you're saying in terms of, is there enough of a difference in the tree streets? It sounds to me like there isn't enough of a difference, but let's find out.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on. Are we good? So we'll save that motion till next meeting. Okay, so Sarah, the expression of interest 23-147 submission review. Referred to August 10th Housing Committee agenda for example plans. And that the Housing Committee consider Adaptive Homes, Grant Architecture Studio Inc., Housing Projects, McDermott Construction, Motive Architects Inc., and Sturgis Architecture as qualified candidates to design and provide plans for the plan library. And that the Housing Committee supports staff seeking further information from the qualified candidates to support the committee in providing recommendation for council's consideration. Discussion? Sarah, do you want to lead that topic?
For sure. So I have these two recommendations for you today as a bare minimum. My goal for you today is to try to get another recommendation from you. Looking towards a goal of making plans available for people in time for spring construction season. You could hear me. So just as a little refresher in terms of our terms of reference. There was a little bit of confusion last meeting and a little discomfort around the whole process. So the mandate of the Housing Committee to act in an advisory capacity on implementation of the housing strategy and its objectives. So providing advice. And then in terms of duties and responsibilities of the committee will review and make recommendations to council with respect to policy and decision-making. So it's completely expected and wanted that the committee is able to do some pre-digestion of information and carefully consider and provide some recommendations to council. Ultimately, council can do something else, obviously. But the point is, like, we've got the time, the dedicated time, right? To look specifically at this topic. So I just wanted to make sure, let's go back to that and
Okay.
make sure folks kind of know what the expectation. So this slide here, this has our EOI criteria on here. I've just got this here. You can see it. So in terms of what people were responding to when we put this out. And then as far as who the district ultimately hires, they will provide designs that meet this criteria. And then we can also ask for things like, you know, what might a difference be in for different types of foundations. So one of the big pieces is doing a study, you know, talking with the committee about the committee's concerns, what site characteristics are like. And these are professionals that would then take that information away and come up with solutions to those things like foundation and floodplain and all these things. So this is the comparison table that you should have in your package there. This is the agenda over the week. Is that it? Are there any questions?
Did you send this out earlier or is this the first?
This is an updated version, so the only part that's been changed is for adaptive homes.
How did I miss that before? I didn't see that in.
Came out yesterday, right?
I did attach
Sunday,
the agenda that went out on Friday
right?
and then updated this when some more information came on Monday. So I sent out, I just like, more info was coming from adaptive,
Okay,
that we were gonna get another set of plans for, as an example, from housing.
right.
Do you want me to maybe walk through it?
Maybe walk through it, sure, yeah.
So these, each proponent, they're just in alphabetical order. They're not in any kind of ranking on this particular table. Just want to say that at this point. So I looked at some different criteria in terms of where the questions were last meeting. So we look at what kind of professional these are. Most of them are architects. We do have a couple architectural technologists. In terms of locality, most of them are from BC. There is one out of Calgary. In terms of ones being closer to home, you know, we've got one operating out of Salmon Arm and another one operating out of Revelstoke. In terms of design costs, they vary widely. And that's generally related to whether or not we're talking about an architect or a technologist that would be providing the plans. The other component, which we'll get to in some of the other slides or some other comparison tables, is what are the value added services that they're offering that come along with that cost. So there were lots of questions around foundations. They will all include some basic foundation details, but they will all need to be reviewed and signed off by a geotechnical engineer. And that's just a schedule that's submitted with the building permit. And it's often related to the site. So I'm not sure that we would have pre-stamped foundations drawings, but people would be provided with the drawings they could provide to an engineer who could do that work for them. And then there's a comparison of royalties here, and they seem to vary kind of broadly. A couple of them are saying like free, they're not going to charge them at all. But there's going to be caveats, you know, when we start comparing and seeing what we actually get. There's a couple here for 500, which is great, I think. It's a bit less. And then there's one for almost $1,500, which seems a bit high to me, but I don't know. I would leave that up to the committee to advise if that seems kind of high for a community. And then I added this value added column here because there's all these other things that they talk about that they're going to provide along with the plans in terms of, you know, the design process upfront with consultation. And then in terms of what that royalty fee actually gets the end user in the end, like, are there extra services offered that they're providing after someone takes these plans home to build? And so this whole end part here, this was sort of an attempt to try to compare apples to apples in terms of the final building costs. So as Brian said, there isn't going to be a lot of difference in terms of square footage. So a base price is going to be around 150,000 bare bones. And that covers anywhere from 350 to 550 square feet. And so then we've got a comparison of, you know, drawings, example plans that were submitted that are not necessarily what we're buying, because they may or may not meet our criteria. Some of them are maybe too big. The floor area, like houses in our, wouldn't be able to support that. It's bigger than 40%. So this kind of gives you an idea of the range in price and sort of how much it changes as you do start to get bigger in square footage. So for example, Grant Architecture is at 889 square feet. That's a 2-story building. And a garden, so it doesn't have like a garage under there or anything. That's around 220,000, roughly. But a 680 square foot, that doesn't seem too far out of whack from 150, which takes you up to 600, 170,000. So it seems like these are all kind of right on par, and all these proponents all stated that they were comfortable that they would be able to provide plans that met that ballpark. Final construction cost, generally speaking, at step code 3. Any questions or comments before we move on to some other methods?
And my attachments didn't have on the McDermott property, it said C3 examples. And I didn't see any, my McDermott one. Oh yeah, enclosed 3 examples of work. I didn't see any attachments.
This one,
It's a cover letter.
it's from last,
The McDermott construction.
Yeah, so
I didn't see.
last agenda to see the,
yeah, this would be it if you want to pass it to Malcolm. I brought my packet from the last meeting.
That's I had that printed sitting on my table. Oh, so this is McDermott? Yeah. You know, this one, I guess. Hey.
Right.
So are we gonna pick? Oh, sorry.
I've got,
Go ahead.
I've got more to show you if you got.
Okay, yeah, please.
In terms of comparisons, we already kind of talked about the locality. In terms of professional, there's 2 architectural technology and 4 architects. So when you sort of start looking at the range of prices there's some reasons why they're different. If you want to talk about it, you can explain. So Grant Architecture and Motive Architects, tons of experience, tons. And they're bringing a very impressive team that has lots of experience in a lot of situations and are very capable of doing these projects. These 2. So that's why their prices are higher. You're paying for someone who really understands how to design something that's small, efficient use of space, and accommodate all the things that we're kind of asking for, with it being adaptable, with it being able to meet energy step code, with it being able to address any potential privacy issues between neighbors or between the home. The other thing, it's a little right because but he has also demonstrated that he understands the assignment, like what it is we're looking for. And he's offering quite a lot of value for that price. Sturgis, they were the ones who were originally, they were the $22,000 or more, and we had to buy a lease. That was per plan package. And you had to buy 6. So I went back and talked to him. Did you have a question?
No, I just, yeah, that's not what I was saying. I had to buy so many.
So that was that guy. And so I went back to him and we had a long conversation on the phone, and he thought about it for a few days, and he came back and was like, this price, this is what I'll give you, which looks really great, but it's only this specific plan. And I think there's more questions we can ask him to find out, because that particular plan is not going to meet our construction cost goals. It's going to be way too expensive to build. We would need a different set of plans This red one here,
This one? Okay.
there's a lot of structural engineered things in here, and you look at the windows, those are not
Mhm.
common windows.
No.
That's gonna cost people money, so we would need a new set of plans redrawn that can be constructed to step code 3, blah, blah, blah. Am I making sense? So he's offering this price, but I don't know if that would include redrawing it. I kind of don't think it would.
Yeah.
And what he said initially is we'd have to pay the hourly rate to do any changes to it. So these are, things to consider. So that's the difference with the architects and those prices. That's why those are different.
Yes, Malcolm?
Does it matter to this committee, locality? I mean, we have a finance agreement with the district that, shop local.
Mhm.
But as far as quality goes and knowledge and everything, I mean, all the meetings are by Zoom. The architects work out of their house or their office, doesn't really matter where they do it. So short of shop local, are we weighting locality at all? Does it matter to us?
I don't particularly, for myself, I don't think it matters. I think you want the right expert, the right product for what we're trying to accomplish. And I mean, the Zoom meetings, is there one site meeting? Is there, yes,
Through the chair, if it comes down to me, if it's a close race, then absolutely shop local. I mean, I think if it's like this,
Tiebreaker.
but if it's a tiebreaker, absolutely, I think we need to, I think people know our weather, they know what our ground is like, they know what our people are like, and I think that makes a huge difference if that's going to be a tiebreaker. Personally.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, through the chair, moving along. And so the next one were the architectural technologists. And there's a huge difference in the dollar value they put on here. And to be honest, I don't know how much I would buy into that. It might be worth approaching them to see if they can come down. It seems out of whack to me, this $9,000 versus $2,000. In this case, these are building designs that we already have that exist that they can offer to us, or they're willing to completely redesign something new. But why is this more than this? This guy's an actual architect.
I guess they're
That's what I'm questioning.
yes, Malcolm.
Maybe it's the package, because I noticed they break it down to, like each package is $2,000, but there's how many different levels of, one company broke it down there. There's.
That was McDermott. Adaptive is their royalties, they have no royalties.
So good.
Which means we could sell that as many times as there's no up
Exactly.
cost, right?
It's all like that. Right? And then there's the royalty, which covers, in some cases, it's to help offset a discount that they've offered the district.
Okay,
And in other cases, it's because they are offering value-added services to the end. So that brings me to this next.
Okay.
Where we have a look at what are they actually selling us for that price? What are they giving us? So we're kind of looking through, and these are again just alphabetical order, no particular order really. So you kind of look at, so we went through all the proposals and slowly added each of these different items on here and counted them. And if somebody else also offered it, added a star, so that you could kind of compare their apples. So when you look at this, and I did give you a copy of this table, a printout, if that's easier to see.
so what,
Back, it's a double-sided page.
on the designs offered at that price, cost per design. We,
Another table is like
per plan, so cost per design here is one price.
Yeah.
But this one
So this one, yeah, there's another table that goes with this that I'll show you in a second.
Yeah, because I'm just wondering at 2 to 3 designs for
That's based on our budget.
housing, does that mean that would be,
So from housing, based on our budget, we could get 2 to 3 designs. And I said 2 to 3 here because of GST might take us kind of a little
Okay.
over budget.
Okay.
But this would be within budget at 2 to 3.
okay, now I understand. It's based on the budget number, how many designs would be able to pull into the inventory. Okay.
So, you know, you look at the values around, they're not really offering anything real, like there's, you know what I mean? Same with Sturgis, not really offering anything. Those Sturgis, in terms of, so, you know, something that's really valuable for the end user, they are offering to do site planning. So they provide them with a site plan with setbacks based on a survey that they already have.
Okay,
They would do that for them. That's fantastic.
yeah,
Housing though, so housing will meet with us 2 to 3 times via Zoom. To, you know, figure out, you know, what are the design criteria, must have in the units, etc. They'll provide several different options for each concept that the housing committee could select from, or we could then take to the public to do public consultation on and get feedback on before selecting which, you know, ones to get to buy. Again, 2 to 3 designs. And then as far as to the end user, they will update those plans for us every time building code changes. So as step code changes, the minimum requirements, they'll update those plans. No additional cost to us, though you could kind of, that's probably being covered by the royalty, right?
Mhm.
Which is, I think.
500, yeah.
Just seems to me, you know, a lot more affordable to get a set of plans. So then McDermott, they're like, we're gonna come and study typical sites and sections. Together concept. We'll offer you 2 to 3 concepts to for their price, we could get 3 sets of plans within our budget. And those plans will have options built in to the end user. So, and in this case, with McDermott, that has more to do with the roof, the type of roof. And whether it's flat or whether it's peaked, there's roof options that would go along with that. I would like to ask them if they'd be offering an energy model or not. And if they'd be super minor revisions, because that's what the other thing Housing offered is minor revisions based on site characteristics. Where these need to be shown, you know, a door or window needed to be somewhere slightly different. So in terms of taking a design and making it so it can be attached to a building, they can make those modifications, like minor revisions. And that's all for the price of $500. That's
Right.
pretty awesome. And then when we get to Motive offers like the most, they're also the most expensive. But they're also the most experienced architect on here. So they will also do a site study. They will meet with us 2 to 3 times. They'll provide different concept options that we can do engagement with. They are going to be thinking about privacy in their designs, and they're going to be thinking about passive energy. So ways that a building can heat and cool naturally, and this can be the way the building is constructed. And they're also going to be providing a list of recommended equipment to go in there. So you've already got something, you can quote out your heat system, your air ventilation system, these things Brian was talking about. Because they'll have provided appropriately sized, like these things would work best. At that price, we could get 1 design this year. We could get another design next year, perhaps. We budget again for it. There's also an important note on this, it's on the next slide. They are also offering plan options. And this has more to do with different configurations of the floor plan itself, not necessarily the roof. That's pretty high value in my mind anyway, to an end user, where there's different options like a flipped version, inverted, or, you know, something that's a little different for where they're considering accessibility. I don't know. So that was those. So the three that kind of came out in the matrix, the top three were these guys that offered the most things, just in terms of what they're offering. Not necessarily looking at price. So this would be the proposed shortlist based on that review. And these have been ranked in order. So these have been ranked by value added services that we talked about on the other slide. So in this case with Motive, you're getting the most out of your plans and for the end user. But you're also spending the most money. You're also getting the most experienced architect. One design, but each design includes floor plan variations. So hypothetically, we could ask them to design something that we could then after be like, well, it's above our garage, or let's attach it to a garage, or let's attach it to a house. It could then fill all three types. So if you've got floor plan variations, it makes it really easy to attach it to a house as an addition. It's kind of my thought. And it'd be worth talking to you about, I think. So then you can kind of look. So in terms of the royalties, these are the royalties. 1,000, so they come in a bit less, they're a little bit less experienced, but we can get a lot more plans for that. So this would be a total for 3 plans, right?
Okay.
It's 500, but they are offering the first 3 uses of those plans for no royalty, which is fantastic. We don't need to come up with the money to cover that in terms of trying to get a pilot project going. And then noted there, so their royalty is a bit higher. And then in terms of custom revisions, anything that's kind of over and above minor changes, at least with housing, this is kind of what the cost will be. And it depends on what kind of revisions you're talking about as to what the cost will be, because these are for different professionals. So this is the rate for tech. This is the rate for very experienced architect, right? So you can kind of see the difference in experience.
Right.
And cost a little bit there, right? Tax. And McDermott, I did hear from them, their cost to change things is about $150 now. And that's just a normal cost to anybody coming in off the street.
Okay.
And just reading the McDermott one here, almost the last paragraph, or the second last paragraph. That it's based on a study of typical sites in Sycamore, so they would come here and look at some sites. Initially, we could provide a few conceptual designs for review and selection prior to proceeding in a more detailed working drawings. So that's a value I don't think is captured in your spreadsheet that
So it's
they're
this one.
adding conceptual designs for review before proceeding into more detailed work.
Okay, that's a big factor in why they move around what's out on top. Conceptual options.
Oh, okay.
So for each type of building type, you'll say, so with McDermott, we can afford at their rate, we can afford 3 plans, right? So this means that for each design, so say we want a coach house, maybe 2 types of coach house.
They're doing 2 for each.
We would get 2 to 3 concepts for each building type.
And then they say they're, sorry,
Go ahead.
and then they say they're gonna provide 2 drawings for each, one for code house, one for a suite, one for how did it say that? 2 plans for garden suites, 2 plans for attached suites, and 2 plans for coach houses. So we'll get.
I don't know that we'd actually be buying all those. So some of them they foresaw us buying more plans than we can actually afford.
Each full working drawing package will be $2,000. So a full working package would be 1 coach house design or 2 coach house designs.
1 coach house design.
The package.
That has a few different roof types.
No, roof lines are different.
Yeah, but those are the options that would be included.
For each plan, I feel like it says that they're gonna be 6. Like two for each plan. Oh, preliminary proposals.
I'm kind of curious if
Multiply that by 6.
Okay.
a working drawing package.
Yeah.
So they say 2 carriage houses, 2 garden suites, and 2 add-on suites.
So working drawing package would be for 1 of those.
1 coach house.
And then this is what I'm talking about options, so that would include options for. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
So,
This is what they were offering for
these
options.
are 2 grand.
Oh, it's 12,000. It comes out the same as motive
18 grand.
yeah.
If we needed that, like, I don't
Yeah,
know, we need.
no, I think 3 is good. And because they've got the option to make some design
Well, if I want,
changes,
Mm-hmm.
they have that concept option. So in other words, okay, I like this one, we need to flip it. Or I like this one,
Motive offers that, yes.
but this is McDermott that we're talking about, right?
The only options there are different roofs.
Different routes.
so if I walked into the district office,
Find out if they'd be willing to offer other.
Or like a plan reversal is going, I mean,
Like, could we pay a little more, say
Right.
$5,000, and they give us more options in the floor plan?
like if I walked in the district office and I was gonna do one of these things and I decided I'm gonna do coach house. I would love to see 2 different drawings to pick from. But if I'm walking in the office and deciding I'm gonna just do attach a suite. Again, I wouldn't mind seeing 2 different options.
And Motive.
from them, you'd get 3, right?
A Motive will offer that, because they're gonna offer some different floor plans that go with that.
But if we went with
I think,
Dermot for,
They're gonna offer 3 different ones.
that would be 4,000 for each package, so.
But-
12,000, am I getting it wrong?
Yeah.
12,000 for each package, so far. 12,000 bucks gives us 6 drawings. 2 coach house, 2 suites and 2 garden suites, right? For 12 grand. Am I doing the math wrong or something?
Yeah, so, and our budget is,
we have $10,000 and we still have to pay GST from there, and if we want to. So one of the things we were hoping to get council approval on would be for our pilot project, and one of the components of that, which might end up being the only component, aside from the plant library, would be. Maybe we can hang on to some of that money to cover royalties for 1 to 3 plants, to try to get 1 to 3 of these units built as incentives.
so motive is though over our budget.
They are, but they're gonna give us something that people are gonna get excited about, I think. And they're gonna be capable of doing it, but that's up to you guys to kind of read this and look at it.
Go ahead, Mel.
Remind me how our budget was established.
I think part of getting this information and kind of learning, looking at what they're offering is gonna help us establish a budget. Like, are we willing to look for a little extra
No,
money?
you said we have a budget.
But we have $10,000.
Where'd that come from?
And go all, so that's out of the housing fund, right? That's what we've got.
Because the line item in our
It's in
district
there.
budget for housing of 10 grand.
Exactly. So,
That can
yeah,
bump that up.
but I mean, finding an extra $2,000 somewhere to hire like someone who's gonna do really amazing. To get people interested in doing this and get the juices flowing and get them wanting to do it. So they might not ultimately go with this plan, but they'll see it and be like, oh, this is amazing, and go looking for something else potentially, right?
So
I guess the only thing with, no, but if we go with somebody who we can only get 1 plan from. Is that accomplishing what we want? Even though they're the most qualified? Yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanna say, like, for today,
Yeah,
I'm not trying to push you guys to make a decision on 1. I'm just hoping to narrow down these 6
okay.
to 3.
I think we can get down to 2 today at least. I don't know. So when we look at this,
I think
we're looking at this chart here, the total cost, so. Number of designs, 1, 3, and 3. So when you say 3 for McDermott, that's 1 coach house, 1 garden suite, and 1 add-on suite, sort of.
if that's what we want from them. Are we decided on that? We might not be.
Or we could ask for 3 different coach houses or 3 different garden houses. So we're only
I
getting
don't know if we need them though.
three drawings. And Motive is only getting us 1 drawing.
Yeah, but I think they can do a lot with one drawing. So
But what that one drawing gonna be? Is it gonna be
Yeah.
a garden house, a coach house, or a suite?
what I'm trying to share with you is I kind of think it can be all three. I don't see any reason why. You just take off the part and you don't need. Yeah.
Only getting one design, how could it be three different concepts?
Go ahead, Siobhan.
Yeah, through the chair. I actually talked to a buddy of mine who's an architect in White Rock. And he said for what we're doing, the difference between architect and tech doesn't really, like, we're drawing little square buildings. So if you were, building a cedar, big beam, custom home, yada, yada, an architect is very important. Nothing that this tech guy everything will go through an architect. To go through. In Mark's opinion, because I called him and I said, what is the difference between, I don't know, you're an architect. And what's the difference between these two? And he said, for what you guys are looking to do, go with, and that's just his opinion. He's been doing it for about 25 years and he actually is the high-end guy who builds big fancy buildings. His suggestion was just to go save your money because you're not doing anything fancy. So I would, and I'm not saying lean towards an architect or a tech, but I would pull that out of the equation personally. While I'm looking at these, I'm pulling out the difference in education because we're not building something fancy. We're building a 500 square foot, 1 or 2 story building with a bedroom and a toilet.
Yeah. No, I think I tend to agree with you. I think that overspending on that end of it, we don't need. The architect might be too much. There's so many homes that I've worked on that have been an actual designer, a draftsman. And so it's that much lesser of a level with just as much qualification, or maybe not quite, but they're not doing some of the same things.
But you should be getting the savings for that. If you're paying for a tech, you should be paying for a tech.
So adaptive homes out of Revelstoke. They're
Get $9,000 and we will get one plan with no
Right.
doubt about it. Here, I'll go back to the other.
and
thing.
can we revisit that? Can we have a conversation with them? Like just as we can go back to every one of them?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, like, it's kind of why my initial recommendation is like,
Okay,
support staff to get more information on some of these, but it would be nice if we can narrow down which ones we're getting more information from. So here's our spreadsheet in terms of when we look at, say, adaptive. They're not really offering anything to the end user, and that's our full budget. This is all of our budget. That's $9,000 for one plan.
I kind of like McDermott.
well, I do too. I like McDermott.
They're cheap.
I like them too.
Well,
Like them and Housing personally. I think they're,
if I was picking, I would pick house. You know what I mean? And that's only because of the matrix.
and we need the custom revisions on that too, because that's another thing. McDermott needs to put that number in before we make any decision.
Yeah. So
With the tech, I would imagine it'd be at the lower end because it's tech. For the hourly rate.
Yeah, so. I wouldn't mind having, I think that Housing and McDermott are there, the motive. Or motif or whatever we call them. I wouldn't mind somebody going back to adaptive and talking to them. And seeing, because he's doing free royalties. Or, which is great. He just wants his money up front.
yeah, and I did talk to him about that. I was like,
Yeah.
some of this can be deferred, like ideally the district bears most of the cost.
Right,
Royalties, most of the proponents, they're offering some kind of value add
Right.
service with
Yeah.
it. It doesn't have to, it may just be covering some of the cost of supporting the district in this endeavor. Because the other thing is, any of these, they will benefit from, because we'll be advertising and putting out there the plan library,
Mhm.
we will by default get free advertising basically from the district, right? And pick up business. So somebody ultimately might not buy the plan we're offering. They might go directly to that original designer, select it, and get something else. So it could generate work for them. Anyway, this is as far as my conversation with.
Okay.
This is what I was able to get in terms of a revised proposal. Yeah, so go back and talk to him.
What do you think, Mel?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do.
If you want, it doesn't matter.
So, yeah, I think we need to pick three. I think
Okay.
to go with Sarah's recommendation that we pick three. I feel like McDermott's is definitely in the running for me. Housing is too. I don't know how you guys feel about housing.
I feel I'm the same as you for those two, for
Yeah,
sure.
let's throw adaptive in there. I mean, it's a phone call.
Yeah.
Right? And say, here's our budget. This is what we've got going on. Are you interested?
So if we're revisiting some of them, is it worth revisiting motive? Because there is some negotiation room in that 12,000.
Well, personally, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm thinking, I'm leaning with McDermott and with their pricing, go for two options in each design. So when someone walks in the front door, doesn't matter what they're doing, they can choose between two. And that $2,000 over a budget, but I'm sure council would come up with the money. So I think our end goal should be when somebody walks in the door and goes to the front desk and says, I'm looking at building a cottage house. A garden, I'm using the wrong words here,
Right, gardens.
So here's my,
that they should have two drawings to pick from.
here's my question to you. Yeah, it would be nice to have at least two drawings to pick from when it comes to accessory buildings. My other question is, there's been conversations around purchasing other types of plans, say for duplexes. So zoning currently allows for duplexes. And there's been a lot of interest in terms of the kind of inquiries we're getting. People are really interested in doing duplexes, especially duplexes with suites. Would we want to look at something like that? So in terms of, you think about your final plan library, we don't need to be the be all end all for everyone, but do we need more housing types in future? So do we want 6 accessory dwelling plans in the library when we could have 6 plans total? Some of them are accessory dwellings, some of them are for duplexes.
I think,
Which we're not talking about doing.
No.
today. We're just asking the question, you know, if you're thinking about the vision of what the plan library looks like in an ideal situation at the end of the day.
so, if we go with 3, like if we go with the ones that they provide for the 6,000 and we still got money in our budget, we could go with another option.
Possibly, or that money in our budget can be hung.
Could be hung on to for something next, like let's not blow it all because we're not sure.
I don't think the budget works that way, guys.
No?
I think.
You need to spend it.
Yeah, if you don't spend
You need
it,
to spend it.
on.
You're right.
Is that correct?
Well, let you
So-
want pursue.
Okay, Siobhan, go ahead. Yeah.
Through the chair. To me, it's apples and oranges. I think we're focusing on secondary suites here. And then if we move forward and we say, hey, we need money for the budget because we need to look at duplexes and quads and things like that, then that's something we go back to the council or we look at different grants and stuff. I think right now, our focus has been infill for secondary suites and we need to keep that to be our focus. I think that's a whole different, that's oranges and we're on apples. Personally.
Do we need 6 plans?
And I agree with Councillor Ridge. The amount of effort and level and thought that was put into the line item of $10,000 for housing was. I brought it up to council. I said, we don't even have a line item for housing. And they just right there and then just, well, okay. So he changes the sheets, adds a line item. How much should we put in there? Let's just start with that.
Yeah.
That was the amount of effort and thought that went into that. So we could have easily said 20.
Okay. Yeah,
For
Siobhan.
the chair. And I think if we're gonna start working like, I mean, I think we gotta get this garden suites, get good at that and get those plans sorted. And if we have 6 in our library, then we choose to have 6. If we've got a lot of interest in duplexes and quads, which I hope we do, then that's something we approach in the future and that we come up with the money. And that's a whole different housing committee meeting. Like that's a,
Yeah,
because we've been really focusing on this and I think we need to get this nailed down and do it well. And then we need to start adding stuff because we don't have this done. So we got to get our first job done, in my opinion.
And,
yes,
and that follows what Siobhan just said, that falls along what Brian said,
yeah,
his opinion.
keep it simple.
I improve
Yeah.
the cottage house.
Okay, yeah. Okay, then maybe what we do is we just go with 2. Do we need to pick 3?
Doesn't matter to me.
I'm happy with McDermott and whatever other
Yeah.
1 or 2 you guys.
In general, I think it's always worth taking at least 3 options to council in the end. So in terms of making a final recommendation, so say the committee picks one, we go to council with a recommendation, there should be at least 2 other options if they decide they don't want the one the housing committee recommends.
Okay,
Okay,
So it's nice to have 3. Doesn't matter which 3, just.
for the chair,
yes,
I do McDermott housing and then adaptive.
okay. Mel?
You know, I'm pretty solid on McDermott. There's, housing looks okay, and the 3rd one, I'm open to whatever.
Well, and I would agree with. I'm gonna agree with Siobhan that we just add adaptive to that as the 3rd one. And keep it simple.
I'll go with that. then.
They're all relatively. Well, 2 are local.
Now, would you want to form any of this into a recommendation at this point, or do you want to find out more from adaptive before making a recommendation? On these 3.
Mel and I are gonna disagree
We,
Yeah.
you know, right off the bat.
You go first.
here. Through the chair, I think we need more information.
I agree with Siobhan, so.
Mel's like, bring it to council.
Well, it means 1 extra meeting,
I know.
1 request.
You got 3 years, going nowhere.
Sarah, I planned for 1 more meeting just in case. Though we do want to try to I'd like to take something to the committee of the whole on the 13th.
Okay,
To update them on the progress, and with that, we would highlight these 3, show them the 6, highlight these 3 as top runners. So my other question though is, do you want me to ask Motive about their quote, because they did say there was some negotiation room in the 12,000?
I don't,
They're not shortlisted, so,
No.
you know,
Okay, sounds good. So then these were the recommendations if you're ready for them.
yeah. So,
About which ones are considered to be qualified candidates of the 10. We have 6 here out of the 10. Recommendation 2 is to support staff in getting more information. So from Adaptive and McDermott, it sounds like.
yes,
Okay.
okay, so I'll make that recommendation. That you get that information.
Are these 2
Right.
at the beginning?
Yep.
I'm assuming everybody moved them, or do you need to move them now?
We went right into discussion, I think.
Okay. I would like-
So. Do you want me to read it again out loud? Okay,
well, recommendation 1 is redundant, isn't it?
Well, last time we were here, we had 10, and you really wanted all 10 to just go there. So they've been narrowed down to at least 6 that we would talk about with the committee. Cool.
But we're down to 3 now.
Okay, sure.
yeah, it says,
It just sounded like you wanted more information from Adaptive before recommending Adaptive as one of the 3.
actually, that's what that's what it says, is the recommendation is that we seek further information. From the qualified candidates to support the committee in providing recommendations for council's consideration.
So it's already covered in the rest.
So it's already covered.
So. But then.
It's gotta name the companies.
I'd remove a bunch of these and to seek more info.
Well, what Brenda is reading and what's up there seem to be different.
Just a minute. No, recommendation, it's just not listed as a recommendation. That's all. on the. So I read number 1.
So they're not numbered, there's two that
Okay,
on there. The document list ended up,
okay, so there it is. I've got it.
it's the agenda, okay, so it, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let me reread them then, now that we've got handled the discussion. It's a little bit backwards, but. So that the Housing Committee consider Adaptive Homes, Grant Architecture Studio Inc., Housing Projects, McDermott Construction, Motive Architects Inc., and Sturgis Architecture as qualified candidates to design and provide plans for the library. I need a mover.
Well,
That was-
doesn't make sense to me.
But we're going down to 3.
Yeah, we need to modify that.
Yes, but the recommendation 2 is where it goes down. Is that, am I reading that right, Sarah?
Yeah, it's saying support staff and seek further information from qualified candidates. So it's really saying all of the qualified candidates in recommendation 1, which I think is what Malcolm's asking, is if everyone would want. So I guess you're gonna initiate a new motion to remove those that are not of the 3.
Yeah, we'll just modify that. The housing committee consider Adaptive Homes, McDermott and housing.
And Motive,
Yes.
we're gonna go talk to Motive as well?
No.
Okay, all right,
Just so. Just scratch them all out.
okay, and I'll reread it.
Grant, Studio Inks and Motive. and
Okay.
Sturgis.
So I will reread that. Recommendation that the Housing Committee consider Adaptive Homes, Housing Projects, McDermott Construction as qualified candidates to design and provide plans for the planned library. Mover, Siobhan? Second. Malcolm? All in favor? Malcolm?
Sorry, I reading here.
Okay. Carried. A recommendation that the Housing Committee supports staff seeking further information from the qualified candidates to support the committee in providing recommendation for council's consideration. Which would be those 3 in the
Yeah.
previous. Okay, you'll move that, okay? Siobhan second, all in favor? Carried. Okay, next, your meetings. Next,
Fair.
yes, Sarah.
So I took a stab at thinking ahead in terms of time.
Yep.
I think, we're out of time in terms of trying to get a plan library set up for the fall. Not gonna happen. So the next opportunity that sort of lines up when people are starting to think about this is gonna be the spring. So this is kind of what I came up with if we think we can get this to work for us. So September 13th, which is the upcoming meetings. I was thinking we could go to committee of the whole to give them an update on the housing committee's activities with the EOI and highlight the 3 candidates that the committee has selected. And this would be for information and discussion. Committee of the whole doesn't make decisions, so we're not going to be making recommendations or asking for decisions, but certainly there can be a discussion around there. So then October 5th, that's our next scheduled housing committee meeting date. So I would suggest that that's when we kind of finalize the committee's recommendation to council for one of them. But one of 3, like I was saying, it's always good to take 3. Just so there's some alternative options, and we can attach the information for the rest of them too, but in terms of what the options are in the staff report, council can always write a new recommendation, do you know what I mean, for a different thing, but try to focus on the 3 that the committee's already kind of vetted. So then I would suggest we have another meeting at the next available. So we normally meet the first Thursday of every month, doing one in November. So that would be November 2nd. I don't know if that works for everyone's schedules, but I would suggest, so then the October 25th council meeting, we would take that to the October 25th council meeting to get them to make a decision on which one we're gonna work with on the plans. And then November 2nd, we need an extra meeting to do the project launch meeting with with that proponent. And then ideally by January, leaving time for Christmas and people being away. So the first meeting day in January after all the holidays would be the 11th on a Thursday. Review concepts. So ideally by then, you know, the proponent has provided a bunch of different concepts. And from there, we can pick from them in terms of, you know, doing some public outreach, do a survey, open house, whatever, and get some feedback from the public before selecting which concept we want to get plans drawn up for. And maybe looking at doing a January through February public engagement. So then, you know, that would leave the proponent, it's going to depend on their schedules too. So ideally, within that window of time, we've got plans available for like when the ground is thawed and people can actually put foundations in, which would be what?
End of March,
April, I think.
end of March, depending on the winter,
Yeah.
end of March, beginning of April.
I don't know how realistic this sounds to the committee, but.
Malcolm?
Well, I have a question about the timelines there. I just don't, I'm totally for transparency and public engagement and everything like that. But so we take it to the committee of the whole with our 3 options. Why not, when we take it to the committee of the whole with 3 options, aren't we presenting them at that point with our preferred lead proponent? Why can't that be done on the 13th of September? And then
If you think.
final recommendations to council. I understand that, so that makes sense. So, but on October 5th, when you get the final recommendations going to council, they'll hopefully follow our recommendation. So on October 5th, we'll have a lead proponent. So what are we doing on the 11th and the 25th?
So the 11th, we'd be going back to the committee of the whole. So the first one on the 13th is like introducing them to where we're at. So all of council has no idea what's going on right now. The 13th is going to be their first introduction to what's happening with the EOI and what we've actually gotten for submissions. That'll be their first introduction, and just it'll be for information. So then
Won't we have a lead proponent at that time?
we might not, because we don't have another meeting before October 5th. So this is where you have the option for another meeting. I think, is it UBCM or SILGA or something is coming up?
September 18th.
18th to the 22nd September. Okay, anyhow, it just,
So if you want another meeting, how do we get here?
you understand what I'm wondering?
Yeah, I think we need to get things moving because if people have to get, like, it would be nice to have the plans in by kind of early spring, before early spring. So I'm coming and I gotta get my business permits and stuff, and I want to put one in that we're not losing a season.
Can I ask a question? Have you not done this before where you take something to committee of the whole? Is that not the 1 o'clock, the early one? And then at the regular meeting,
Yeah,
why don't we do it all on the same day?
we discuss stuff in committee of the whole, and then
Voted on
on the agenda the same evening, it's on there as a recommendation.
Right.
What's been happening though is things getting kiboshed at council. They won't even talk about it. So we'll present it at committee of the whole. You go to council later in the evening and they're like, nope, this is too fast. Next meeting, a month from now, give it more time.
But maybe we need more information in our package when it comes out, so people can study it.
I don't,
I
there's.
Well, I'm,
Time for people to get.
but we should get the option.
For sure, yeah.
So if we're actually recommending somebody on the 5th. And if we have our meeting on the 2nd with the proponent. Are they gonna have enough time before, like, will they have time? Could they present concepts prior to the end of the year? I know December's busy, but yeah,
Depend on who we go with. So, for example, McDermott, I think it's gonna take them a lot longer to get stuff to us, potentially. I mean, we'll just have to ask them as far as more info, like how long do you think before you can get concepts to us?
So
But that could be a reason to add them or subtract them too, right? Like we can, before we pick them, we should know if it's gonna be a year or 2 weeks.
I think that's actually, that's a good question for all of them. I think, like, this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is our time frame. We want to know that we can have 3,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, let's put that question,
That
timing.
when do you want the concepts by? So in terms of doing engagement, so we need the concepts, yes, community needs to see them, look at them. And then in terms of engagement, what times of year?
Well,
seem right?
even if we go with this schedule that you're proposing, once we've got them, the feasibility for them to, maybe our public engagement is only January, maybe it's not February, like how can they fit in what we want? Or, because anybody who's thinking of doing this is thinking of doing it, like they've got a plan to get construction going. They've already got to have picked the builder now, right?
They're just starting to
So-
ask the questions now.
Right.
And you talk to them about, it's like, you need to do this throughout the winter to be ready for spring, and they're usually not.
No.
Yeah.
So I feel like, maybe the reality is they're only gonna start construction in June,
But it's a question. I think.
But it's a-
I think.
I think it's a question anyways. I think it gives, yeah, I agree, Siobhan. We need to kind of know that they can fit in with at least a spring launch. And that people can kind of do their homework over the winter finance wise. I think when they find out about it in January, it's like, get all your ducks in a row. Talk about construction, talk about,
Do you want to do another related, but kind of an aside? Do you want to do another open house before the end of the year? In terms of generating interest and excitement around the plans coming out, like for the survey?
I don't think we'd have anything to offer.
no,
And I don't think we're gonna get anybody different.
no.
But I'm still questioning the timelines here. Okay, September 3rd, we do that. That makes sense. Goes to committee of the whole. And then October 5th. We have a meeting. To pick one of the 3 options. But on that same date, once we pick one of those 3 options, why can't that be a resolution to council on that same day, October 5th?
Absolutely. I think you just have to build in some potential for. Because we can't control what happens at the council level.
True, but let's give it,
Bit of a buffer.
let's get it in front of them, no?
Yeah, I think the more information and the sooner it's in front of them, the better result we're gonna get. Because people just need information, right? They're trying to make decisions for the entire community. It's not that they're trying to stop us. They just want to make informed information choices.
And then on the 5th, council can make a decision, and then that's done. It doesn't have to go back to the committee of the whole, because the committee of the whole reports to council, and council's already made the decision.
Let me catch up.
But I don't understand.
Let me catch up with you. Which day are you wanting to take a recommendation to council?
5th,
October 5th. That's a housing committee day.
The housing committee, it's our meeting.
oh, when's our next council meeting? Sorry.
Is September 13th, but you don't have enough I don't know if we're gonna have the information.
That's the tight timelines for yourself.
Yeah,
I
It's
understand.
11th, so the 11th, October 11th.
okay, October 11th.
Is that a council meeting, October 11th?
Meeting at the cow, explain things and have a conversation, and then council later in the afternoon for,
Resolution.
hopefully for a decision.
As long as council has a really good package in front of them,
And in front of them, at least 2 days before the council
more
meeting.
than 2 days. Because we need it to go out.
Friday before.
It needs to go out with Friday with Sarah's
It
packet.
needs to go with the agenda
Yeah,
Friday.
it absolutely does.
Yeah.
Because we bank on that and put our time aside to read, right?
That stuff is done and ready for the Wednesday. I have all that work done for Wednesday at noon.
Okay. I think that's,
Well, the agenda is posted on
Then just.
Friday afternoon.
Friday.
And the weekend and the 2 days up to Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, okay,
And then
so in terms of,
that.
If they need to push it off, it gets pushed off, but if they've got all the information
Yeah,
and we've done all the homework. It's not like we have not spent time on it, and you've got two council members here.
okay, so one question that I don't have, I'm not clear on the answer. Did you want to try to have another meeting before October 5th, or are you happy with having a meeting October 5th? I understand that Brenda's away all of September and we'll be relying on Tia to form a quorum. And I don't know, she's not here to ask.
Yeah,
But what would we be doing in our meeting between October 5th?
I think,
Pardon me?
Picking one. Which one?
Can you get us the information and we can do our reading and do all that? And I think if we don't have everyone, we can't really pick one, like even without a quorum, I think. But if we can get the information and read, be prepared.
yeah,
So for October 5th, you're gonna pick which one you
Mhm.
recommend to council of the three.
I agree. Yeah,
and when's council meeting? I forget again. Sorry.
11,
11. Yeah, on the 5th, we'll pick one.
yeah,
On the 11th, we'll give 3 to council with our preferred lead proponent.
okay.
I got it.
Council makes a decision on the
Yeah.
11th.
And if we can have like a week to 5 days to sit on that stuff, when it comes in the day before or something, it just, life for me anyways, I don't know about you, Brenda, it's a lot.
Yeah.
I got 2 days to try to think. Thinking is hard.
Well, hopefully things are calmer now that people are back.
Here's this one email back. Right.
Okay, so,
We've got to finish this up.
yeah,
Mel's leaving.
adjournment. So if that's everything for today, recommendation at the Housing Committee meeting for August the 29th, 2023, be adjourned at the time being 3:29 PM. Siobhan? Malcolm? All in favor? Yay.
Got it done.